Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my garage. Today is Sunday, January 31st, and I finally have this place cleaned out enough to where I have the room to assemble my new dust collector. I bought the Grizzly G0703. It is a 1.5 horsepower, 2-stage Cyclone dust collector. Today, what I'm going to do is basically unbox this unit and assemble it for you. And then after I've used it for a while, I'll do a second video where I'll give you my opinions on how well it works or how well it works for me. And hopefully, if any of you are looking for dust collectors in the future, maybe that information will be beneficial to you. Here's a first look at the dust collector. It was very nicely packed. Let me run over here and show you. These are some of the parts. Sorry for the jerky camera movement, but there we go. Now what I'm going to do is take a few minutes. I'm going to browse over the instruction manual, which came in the top of the box, and we'll get started on the assembly. This dust collector can either be wired for 110 or 220. In my shop, I'm going to run it as a 110 unit, and it comes pre-wired for 110. If you are going to use it in your shop and you're going to run 220 to the machine, you will need to do a little bit of work inside the control box here, and that information is all laid out in the manual. Now, with running this at 110, I'm going to need to install a 20 amp breaker in my circuit box and dedicated wiring to the unit. So we'll work on that a little bit later. But let's just get it assembled for now. I'm going to start out, and this part I'll do off camera, but I've got a hardware recognition chart and I've got an inventory of all of the pieces that come with the unit. I'm going to take a few minutes before I get started and just go through everything and make sure all of the parts are there. I won't film that, but I'll come back and film the actual assembly of the unit. I've laid out all the parts and I've gone through the parts list, and everything that is supposed to be here is here. So I'm ready for assembly. I found my first real discrepancy with the manual. You've got these castors that you're installing, and when you put them in, there are some threaded inserts on the frame, and it calls for a 3/8 inch wrench to tighten them. And as you can see, sorry about that, 3/8 inch is way too small. Turns out these are 9/16 inch, so had to run and get another wrench, but we should be able to tighten our castors down now. Another small issue, when I had to upgrade to the 9/16 inch wrench, the thickness of the wrench is too much to tighten the nut because it interferes with the rail. Luckily, I have this old school set of wrenches that I'm not sure where my father got, but he had them forever and passed them to me, and they're nice and thin, so I ought to be able to get right in there and tighten those nuts down. So be ready for that. You're going to need a wrench that's a little bit thinner than a standard 9/16. Okay, I've got another small discrepancy. In the manual, it shows attaching this H-rail to the handle, and you can see there are some inserts for the bolts to go into. In the manual, it shows that this H-rail connects to all 4 of these bolts, but as you can plainly see, the most I can get at any one time is 2, and actually all I can get at any one time is 2. So I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to start out by putting it in the center and bolting it in here, and hopefully that will work out, but we may have to change the location of this H-rail later in the assembly. We'll see what happens. Okay, what I thought was a snag earlier, installing the H-bars onto the rails, I can actually see now was my misinterpretation of the manual. The manual's exactly right. I don't know how well you can see it, but right here, it talks about the H supports. Until I got to this step where I'm going to install the handle, and I see where the handle gets installed, and I can also see the length, what it is, that's supposed to be installed to the base. Those rails are installed to the base, and the T-handles connect to the base and connect to the handles and to the rolling base. So what I'm going to need to do is go ahead and disassemble these rails, and then I'll take the T-bars off and I'll get that assembled to the rolling base. So that is not an issue with the manual. That is an issue with the installer. All right, I'm ready for the next step, and I did look at the manual very, very closely for this one. The open feet, the opening here, goes toward the Cyclone because that's where all of the garbage will drop out, and there'll be a can here for collection, or so it will go on this way. Now, I'm going to get back to where I was. That unit attaches up here, so what they recommend doing is tipping this forward like this, attaching the front bolts, and then you can lay it on its side and attach the other bolts. I don't know if I'm going to do the side, lay it on its side, or if I'm going to try to upright it and let it pivot into place and then put the bolts in. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. I had a little bit of a binding issue on the far side, so I had to kind of loosen things up on this side and shift it around, but I got it hooked in there. I think what I'm going to try to do is lift it up and pivot it into place, and then while it's hanging, I'll go ahead and put the other 6 bolts in. Okay, correction. With the wheels, I think if the wheels weren't on there, it would hold and I could lift it up. But with the wheels on the stand, as I lift, the stand wants to roll forward. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my cardboard around, and I'm going to lay it over on the side, and I'm going to follow the directions. Should have done that in the first place. That's why they give them to us, right? Oh well, let's see what we got. Now that I've corrected my earlier mistake, I'm going to go ahead and attach the handle. This should be relatively straightforward. There are some inserts on the rail, right here, and they match up nicely with the holes in the handle, and all I need to do is attach the bolts. With this unit, there is a handle that gets mounted on top, and what this handle does, there are some paddles inside of the filter, and the paddles beat the filter and cause it to drop any dust that might have collected along the perforations inside the filter, or the ribs, I guess, will drop down into the filter bag. My dust collector's complete. All in all, the installation was very easy, very smooth. There was one or two places in the manual where they listed the wrong size wrench for the bolt being used, but the bolts are all standard, so if you have a standard set of sockets, it wasn't a big deal, just swap to the one you need. The only real tough part for me was putting the ring around the catch canister down there. I couldn't quite get that thing to center. It wanted to move, but once I got it lined up, I kind of gave it a few love taps on the inside. Went together pretty easy. I think the instruction manual is very well laid out. There were maybe one or two places where I think the graphic could be a little better. For example, I messed up on the stand. I didn't realize I needed to install these H brackets and connect the top and bottom halves together, because the pictures kind of only showed, it looked like just the top half of the rail. So that was a little tricky, but that was me. A better picture or a better explanation would work well there. Beyond that, I thought the installation was great. I'm not going to be able to plug this up and run it at the moment because it requires a 20 amp breaker, and I've got a spot for this in my shop, and I'm going to be heading to the hardware store, purchasing 20 amp breaker and the wiring and everything that I need, and I'll get it all wired up, and at that point in time, I'll fire this baby up and give you guys a quick test run. Later on, after I've used it for a month or so, I promise I'll come back. I'll do another video that kind of talks about likes, dislikes, and give you guys an opinion on what I think about the overall dust collector. So I hope you liked my video. This is a far cry from what I normally do, but some folks, when I said I got this, said, hey, are you going to show how to put it together? Are you going to do an unpacking video? So I did one, and if this is your cup of tea, I really hope you enjoyed it. If it's not, I hope you don't thumbs down me. I hope you elected to just go ahead and pass on the video and watch one that's more to your liking. So listen, guys, have a great day. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. I'll see you again real soon.